Okay, this is 373, week 4, part 9. Cool. I'll probably end here on the next one. So now this story I tell to my students. Um, but it's worth it. What's interesting that happened is Quentin Tarantino made a movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is possibly Quentin Tarantino's best film. I used to love Tarantino, then I started hating him because Django Unchained was a piece of shit movie, and then he got good again. Hateful Eight was like long but sort of interesting, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was amazing, and I think it's his best or his second best movie after Jackie Brown, which nobody likes, but I really like it. I think it's a fucking rad movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I don't know if you saw it. If you didn't know if you didn't know the story of Sharon Tate before watching that movie, I imagine it's real confusing. When I watched it, I was really surprised because you need to know what happened to Sharon Tate for that movie to make any fucking sense. That movie is kind of a giant joke, and if you don't know who Sharon Tate is, you're not going to get the joke. But the joke of the movie is that it's like a 2.5 hour movie about these two guys this washed up actor who lives near Sharon Tate, and his stunt double played by Brad Pitt, and the actor is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and the whole movie, and you just see their adventures around Hollywood, and then you cut every once in a while you find out what Sharon Tate's doing, and you check in with her. But if you know who Sharon Tate is, you know how this movie is going to end. It's Sharon Tate. She's going to end by getting stabbed to death by these hippie teenagers. Um, but you see, I spent 2 hours and 40 minutes like dreading watching beautiful Margot Robbie, who was fucking perfect as Sharon Tate, dreading watching them. I knew it was going to be such a violent ending, and I was just like, oh my god, I love Margot Robbie so much. I do not want to see her get murdered, but I like Tarantino, so I went. And I'm going to spoil the movie for you. But the movie has a twist ending, which is that it takes place in some kind of alternate universe where she doesn't get killed because the kids on their way to kill her get distracted by Quentin Tarantino's character, by the kids on the way to kill Sharon Tate get distracted by Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who's not a real person. But in the so it's like he intervenes and bothers them, and then the kids are like, "Hey, we were going to kill Sharon Tate, but you know what we should do instead? Let's kill Leonardo DiCaprio's character." And then they show up, and Brad Pitt's there, and he destroys those teenagers. And so, of course, if you're in the audience, you know what happened to Sharon Tate. You're cheering for Brad Pitt because the murder of Sharon Tate was one of the most horrific crimes in sort of Hollywood history, and he's saving her. He doesn't know it because he doesn't know what we know. We know the real history, and he's living in some kind of alternate universe where events transpire differently. And then at the end of the movie, Sharon Tate's still alive, and in this universe she never gets killed. But you don't know that you're in this alternate universe until the very end of the movie. It's a beautiful, incredible movie, and I don't mind spoiling the ending for you because honestly, it's such a perfect fucking film. It's not about that. And anyway, that was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Okay. Why am I telling you any of this? What is the point of this? Um, the point of this is Roman Polanski um, was a filmmaker, and he wasn't home when Sharon Tate was killed, but she was brutally, brutally murdered. But Roman Polanski went on to make more movies. He's still alive, and he still makes movies. He has recent movies that he makes. He makes them in France, and I'll talk about why next week. But he makes movies. Fucking Roman Polanski, Jesus Christ. Anyway, why am I telling you this? Well, because Roman Polanski's next movie after Sharon Tate is killed was Macbeth. Now, that's interesting, but what's really interesting is to watch the scene that we just went over. Macduff is not at home when his wife and children are murdered by assassins sent by Macbeth. And someone tells him, hey, your wife and children were murdered by assassins sent by Macbeth. Roman Polanski's wife and his unborn child were murdered by assassins sent by Charlie Manson when he wasn't home. I don't even know where to start. I'm going to try to find a clip of the scene and put it on the playlist. I don't even know where to start with that. Um, we talk about literature, stories being an escape. This is not a fucking escape. He has, you gotta feel like the reason he made Macbeth was because of that scene. I mean, that's crazy how closely that scene parallels. I mean, it's one thing to just be like, this guy's wife was murdered, my wife was murdered. This guy's wife was murdered when he wasn't home. Roman Polanski wasn't home. And the murderer didn't do it himself. The murderer sent assassins to do it. Macbeth sent assassins, Charlie Manson sent assassins. Like, man, it's so crazy. But Macduff, of course, ends up killing Macbeth at the end of Macbeth, and it feels a little bit like what's going on is that Roman Polanski makes the movie as a way of processing that trauma. Um, he makes the movie like as a way of processing the trauma. I don't know. Maybe it's such a crazy thing in Hollywood history that this even happened. Um, I mean, that Sharon Tate was murdered, but it's so crazy that Roman Polanski's response is to make Macbeth. His Macbeth is famously bloody. Now, if you see Roman Polanski, you're going to be tempted to watch Roman Polanski's Macbeth. I will tell you, it is not my favorite version of Macbeth. Um, it's bloody, but I don't think you will find it bloody in a satisfying way. It's not bloody by modern movie standards. It's extraordinarily bloody by Shakespeare movie standards at the time. Before Roman Polanski's Macbeth, Shakespeare movies were these very stuffy kind of. They didn't show a lot of blood. They weren't bloody. Even though Shakespeare movies involve lots of people getting killed, Shakespeare movies before Roman Polanski were like you stab the guy with a sword, but there's no blood. It's because it was supposed to be like this educational, it's fancy, I don't know, it's fancy, and so they don't want it to be like a horror movie. But Roman Polanski was like, I'm gonna make this shit like a fucking horror movie, and he did. Um, so it's something else to think about with art. That it's a way of what if the what if the person making the art is getting some kind of therapy from doing it because it has links to his life? Is the movie better because he's drawing on personal experience for that scene? It's just a wild thing to think that anybody would respond to this kind of massive public tragedy in this way. Um, and there's no I just don't see how I can teach Macbeth without telling you about Roman Polanski because it is surely one of the most interesting responses to Shakespeare's play that anybody's ever come up with. And again, the movie's okay. It's fine. You also may hear that it's produced by Playboy, which makes it sound sexy. It is not sexy. It's just the Playboy was in the business of making some movies in the 1970s and they gave them funding and their name is on it. But it's like literally Playboy presents, and then it's like very ugly witches. Um, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting sort of Hollywood oddity. Now, I should say a little bit more about Roman Polanski, and maybe I will do one more video since this is video number 8. Um, Maybe I will do one more video, but I feel like I can't teach Macbeth unless I tell you about Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate. But I feel like I can't tell you about Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate without telling you what Roman Polanski did next. Um, and this is unfortunate, and but to not mention it, to not mention Roman Polanski in the context of Macbeth seems wrong, but to not talk about Roman Polanski's life after Sharon Tate's murder also seems wrong. So I think I have to say this, and I'm sorry to all of you for this. Roman Polanski, his life in the newspapers did not end at that point. He was a powerful Hollywood man. He, people wanted to be in his movies because he could make you famous. He could put you in the movie and you could be famous. There was a mother who had her daughter hang out with Roman Polanski. She was 13 years old, and Roman Polanski drugged and anally raped her. And then he was supposed to go to court, and he felt like he wasn't going to get a fair trial, and then he ran away to France. And he's been there ever since. He doesn't even deny that it happened. He just doesn't want to go to jail, and so he lives in France, and he makes movies in France. And sometimes actors go to work with him. Did you like Kate Winslet in Titanic? She went to make a movie with Roman Polanski in 2012. Do you like Johnny Depp? Because he made a movie with Roman Polanski called The Ninth Gate. He made that back in the late 90s, early aughts. Anyway, did you like Christopher Waltz in Inglourious Basterds? Because he also made a movie with Roman Polanski in 2012. Hollywood, everybody. This could be the last video, maybe not. I may come back and say a little bit more about this. But I will. Actually, I think that's probably it for the week. I think I got it. I'll get you some clips and things and show you some trailers for Roman Polanski movies, and maybe even I'll put the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood trailer on there so you can see that and see the Quentin Tarantino's version of Sharon Tate. Anyway, I think that successfully ends week 4. Thank you for joining me. You are all amazing. Maybe I should say more. I don't know. I don't want to make it like a joke. Like, it's very upsetting that he did that, and it connects to all of the Hollywood abuse towards women that still exists today. And also, it's interesting too that, like, I gotta say more. I'll do one more video. Maybe we'll do a short one.